Now, for more on the UN concerns over the war in Ethiopia, I'm joined live from New York by VOA UN correspondent Margaret Besheer. Margaret, so much condemnation from international bodies there. What's the latest from the United Nations on this Ethiopia Tigray conflict?
Well, as you heard in Paul's report, there's concerns about Shire, and we just heard from the Secretary General's spokesman that they have reports about possible mass movements of people in that area, and they're very concerned about them, about their safety, about fighting, civilians caught in fighting in that area. The UN Secretary General is continuing contacts with the African Union at all levels, and the UN Security Council will meet on Friday morning in a private meeting to discuss the situation in Ethiopia. This meeting was requested by the 3 African members of the council, Gabon, Ghana, and Kenya. I understand from diplomats that there was a bit of pushback from Ethiopia. They didn't want this meeting to happen, but it appears to be scheduled now and going ahead on Friday.
Margaret, what has been the response of the Ethiopian ambassador to the United Nations regarding Secretary General's remarks?
Well, he wasn't happy about them. He tweeted on Monday after the Secretary General spoke. He said that the Secretary General's statement was unwarranted, that it was exaggerated assertions, it did not reflect reality. He said it would undermine the AU-led peace effort and the ability of the UN to play a positive and constructive role in Ethiopia.
And what's the United Nations saying about the humanitarian situation in Ethiopia? We know in the past people rallied together, the international community, to help Ethiopians during the famine. Is there any kind of response so far on what's going on the ground?
Sure. Well, concerns continue to grow over the humanitarian situation, which has been bad in the north for the past 2 years of this conflict, but it's also bad in other parts of the country, particularly in the south, where unprecedented drought is affecting millions of people there. In the north of Ethiopia, there are 9 million people who need humanitarian assistance, but in the south, it's nearly as bad. There are about 8 million who need some sort of assistance, and then you have nearly 6 million internally displaced people across the country who also need help. So it's just a mammoth task for humanitarians. The UN has asked for about $3 billion this year to meet the needs. It's only about 40% funded so far, and the year is nearly over for planning purposes. And in the north in particular, it's very hard to reach large areas because of fighting. A lot of areas are inaccessible, and the UN has its own humanitarian air fleet, and that fleet has been grounded since August 25th when the fighting resumed, when the ceasefire was broken. So it's really been a difficult situation for humanitarians, not to mention that it's difficult for them too and dangerous. The International Rescue Committee had a staffer who died of his injuries while distributing aid in Shire just on Saturday.
Right. Margaret, thank you so much. VOA correspondent Margaret Besheer reporting live from the United Nations.